Hey everyone, I'm Chris from Lords of War, and we're going to chat today about a little bit about the Adepticon preview, but more specifically about Age of Sigmar 4th edition. It's been announced. They showed off a banging cinematic trailer, and we haven't seen any models yet, but let's be real. Like, what Age of Sigmar models did they ever release that are not awesome, right? So I have full faith that the models are going to be cool. Let's kind of just sideline that on its own. Age of Sigmar, come at me if you want, but make the best models, hands down. Awesome. I'm not biased. So let's talk about Age of Sigmar 4th edition. I think this is all or nothing for Games Workshop. And it doesn't make me happy to say that because Age of Sigmar is a game I love. I've been playing it since first edition. I was a big fantasy guy for years and years with Warhammer fantasy battles, and I just love their fantasy games. And I have been not beating the drum, but liking less and less the choices they've been making with Age of Sigmar specifically. And so let's talk about the current state of affairs, where we're at, 3rd edition. We've done videos on this, so you can go back and check them out if you want to, if you want like more of an in-depth kind of discussion with Jay and I. Oh yeah, by the way, he's not here today. You probably noticed it's just me, Jason Adepticon. Don't worry about it. I couldn't go because I came down with something, unfortunately, at the last minute. So I figured it'd be better to put out a video today rather than do nothing. So hopefully you guys enjoy this solo talk, even though it's just me rambling and Jay not cutting in and adding his 2 cents. So where we're at right now, I feel, and keep in mind, this is my view in my shop. I do talk to a lot of other shop owners. I do have some Games Workshop connections still because I worked there quite a while, and I got some friends that still work there. And I just kind of we do shop talk here and there just to kind of stay sane, and also, making sure is the stuff I'm seeing actually true, or am I crazy? Am I putting my own bias on stuff? It's always good to have that connectivity when you have a business or in any trade, where you can just bounce ideas off of somebody who's going through something similar but not where you are, just to kind of self-check and see where you're at. It's a really healthy way to kind of humble yourself, right? So with all that being said, 3rd edition was a step in the wrong direction, period. Why do you say that? I say that knowing that the people playing it still right now really like it. So that I don't want to undermine the quality of the game, the quality of the product. I think it's a very chunky experience, which a lot of people like. I think the problem with the chunk is that it completely undermines the experience for the new customer. So there's this sort of leaky bathtub theory with hobbies, especially ones that are difficult, like where you build and paint models, you play games and stuff that requires effort, and you don't just flick a switch on and start playing a video game. The Warhammer hobby requires effort. So it's already a big ask to get someone to buy models, put them together, and throw them on the table, right? The 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar has, I think, foregone that first experience. It's kind of looked away from that first experience too much to cater to the people that are actually playing it, that want more rules, more interesting dynamics, that sort of stuff. And I'll explain right now why I think that's an error for both people, for both groups. I think the error in thinking comes down to this old adage with wargaming that I think is not necessarily correct, where people sometimes think that complicated means deep or having depth. And I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy. And I think the old example I always use is just a simple game of chess, right? Chess is not a hard game to play. It's an incredibly hard game to master, right? So whenever I'm kind of discussing rule sets with people, and they kind of want things to be more complicated. They want more scenarios. They want this. I always remind them that the real depth from a miniature game doesn't come necessarily from having these like really three-tiered crazy complex scenarios that are overlapping each other, objectives, uh, tactics, army specific tactics, that's not where the depth of the game comes from. The real depth of the game, in my opinion, has always come from the movement and placement of models, choosing your actions and your attacks on the battlefield, and that's sort of like classic, macro general sort of stuff where you're positioning, moving around. Does the game lend itself to that well, and does it let you focus on doing that stuff, fighting the battles, picking your hero, like choosing the like little choices that are kind of crucial to make and when to make them, right? I think that's where the depth and the interest always has come from in miniature games, and I think they still have that very much in Age of Sigmar, which is why people play it. But they've added all this sort of like other stuff that's built up, like all these things that are bolted on all around. It reminds me a lot of like when 40K was in its 7th edition, you had 4 editions of bolt on. Like they had bolted 4 extra editions on. And it felt that way, right, when you were playing it, quite literally, because you would bring all these extra books. But you had your little engine that started really small in 3rd, had all these attachments put on around it in the name of improving, but you lose a beautiful, simple thing sometimes in the process of doing that, right? So I'm not saying 3rd edition isn't a great game. I'm saying that it's lost, I'd say, the core essence of what Age of Sigmar was when it started, which was a simple, and I don't mean simple bad, I mean it was a very simple game to get into. You had a very light rule pack that you could read really quickly, and you could start moving models and fighting on the battlefield, and you got your depth in the game from the scenario you played and what your units did, and that was it. And I noticed, like, the thing was, Age of Sigmar became a great recruiting game, and new players started playing it. It was easy to get into. It was all the things at the time that 40K wasn't, actually. And ironically, the two games have now flipped. 40K has this like beautiful simplicity to it. You can put some models down and really start playing pretty quickly. There's not a lot of rules to read before you play. There's not a lot of hidden stuff. You just flip cards and play now with the missions. Beautifully simple. And I think Games Workshop needs to pull that off with Age of Sigmar once again, because we've seen definitely a sales decline. People are like, it's not like new players are not coming to Age of Sigmar as much as they were at one time before. And I just, part of me thinks, like, is this always going to be a thing with Games Workshop's fantasy game? And before you start coming in and being like, well, isn't it interesting timing with the old world coming out and Age of Sigmar is like not doing as well as it was before? Are people just leaving for old world? I don't want to completely exclude that as a thing, because like any new product Games Workshop puts out is going to ultimately compete with all their existing products in a weird way. Like, we're, a lot of our customers, like, they buy multiple game systems, right? So yeah, you are in a way kind of like competing with yourself in a weird way. But one of the things blowing up the old world the first time was those people didn't go into Age of Sigmar really. Like, there was a really small percentage of us. I know this because I knew the community really well. The survival rate from fantasy to Age of Sigmar in the beginning was very low, very, very low. So when we were going to Adepticon those first couple of years Age of Sigmar came out, we were seeing a lot of brand new, they never played Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They were just new players to wargaming, or they had ported over from 40K. because they liked the rules better for Age of Sigmar. They were simpler, cleaner, made for a more enjoyable tournament experience, whatever. And so part of me is like, okay, Old World probably has had a small factor, but it can never be the big thing, right? Like, I think you have to look inside, like, and what I mean, looking at Age of Sigmar. And part of me is like, will this always be a problem with Games Workshop's fantasy game? Will it always be this way? And what I mean by that is, will it always be difficult playing second fiddle to the flagship product, 40K? It's been going on for, well, what is 40K? 30 years old? 25 years old? Since 40K came out, fantasy has been not struggling, but struggling, right? And they've always been trying to find new ways to make it not compete with 40K and like this, like getting similar sales, but like just to inch a little bit closer. You know, can you make up half the sales or a quarter of the sales? And I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I don't know that it ever can have the same magical, like 40K has this amazing, like being a universe, like the narrative is so big. They've written so thousands of books now. It's crazy how many books they have for 40K. The amount of world building they've done, the Horus Heresy, the background, like it's almost impossible to ask another game to be that when they haven't even put the resources into it, right? How many Age of Sigmar books are they releasing a month compared to 40K, right? And it's a little bit of like, well, of course they're not, Chris. Like, they don't sell as well. It's like, well, chicken and egg, right? How can you ever get the other product to be close to what your main product is if you don't invest in it, right? So it's this weird sort of like the company wants to have it be more successful, but it's almost like it is, number one, like almost an impossible feat, but also you're not world building in the same way, right? Like, you don't get the same feeling about a Stormcast Eternal chamber, the Celestial Vindicators or whatever, that you feel when you see a Blood Angel, right? Like, it just has less meaning because you don't have stories that are drawn upon in your brain, right? Or if you were like me and you've been in the hobby since you were a kid, you don't have all this nostalgia and memories that it ties it to a place, right? So I think it's always going to be a struggle, but it doesn't have to be as hard of a struggle as it is right now. And that's where I think 4th edition comes in. This is where they need to get it right. It needs to be an approachable, easy to play game. I think that will benefit the casual player, the new player, and quite frankly, I think it's good for people that like tournaments too. I really do. I don't think the current system of like, man, you better have all these battle tomes, battle tactics memorized, otherwise you might get, you're not going to be a good tournament player. It's just too much, right? Like, it needs to be a game that people can play somewhat seriously and casually without this insane level of like memory commitment and like you kind of understand what I'm saying. It needs to be more of what it was when it came out, I think, is the easiest way I can put it. A very graceful, simple game. When that first General's Handbook came out, it was beautiful. It was a beautifully simple game. What do you guys think? What are you excited about with the 4th edition? They have talked about a lot of stuff already. They've been giving us some hints. I'm feeling optimistic. And yeah, like I think they're gonna get it right because I think they have to get it right. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe to the video if you can stand me rambling for 15 minutes. I promise it's not always going to be just me. If this is your first video you're checking out from us, it's usually Jay and I, and we do like a little sit and talk discussion, which is more fun. So check us out. Until next time, take care, guys.